Ladies and gentlemen, I have much pleasure in calling on Dr. Wolf to address us.
Thank you. Thank you for this very kind introduction. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be with you this evening and to discuss truly one of the greatest challenges that is facing Israel today in the world, and what you heard previously are manifestations of that. So I will begin by saying something, and you will excuse me if the language is harsh or militant, but this is war. Israel is right now at war. And it is a war in which the weapons are not tanks, they're not airplanes, they're not missiles. The war is waged with words, with images, with ideas. And these are the weapons of this war. Now, you might say, boo-hoo, big deal. At least the war that is being waged now against Israel is not with tanks and airplanes. At least it's not about invading armies. At least it's not about physical threats to our survival. But I would argue that these matter just as much, if not more. Because those who wage this war against Israel, they understand, maybe consciously, maybe subconsciously, they understand something very fundamental about what makes Israel strong. What makes Israel strong is not its superior military force. It's important. What makes Israel strong is not the thriving economy. And I would say what makes Israel strong is not even its people. What makes Israel strong is the idea that drives its people. Israel is a country that was first and foremost born here. It was born as a vision, as an idea in people's minds. And it was an inspirational idea. It was an influential idea. It was such a powerful idea that it drove young people to leave behind their parents. It drove people who were about to graduate from prestigious universities in Europe to become farmers in the Galilee. It was truly an idea that moved mountains. Now, if this idea that had and has so much power is somehow made to be so distasteful, so abhorrent, that none will want to touch it, then something deep in what makes Israel strong is weakened. And if you want to look at history, all of these physical atrocities, I would say all, maybe perhaps almost all of the physical atrocities in our world are preceded by laying the ideological groundwork. No one who ever commits an atrocity thinks they're committing an atrocity. Even the Nazis thought they were doing something good for mankind by ridding it of the Jews. So you first lay the ideological groundwork, and then the atrocity doesn't seem so bad. So if you create an ideological framework by which Zionism, the powerful idea that has created this reality, without this, none of this is here. If you create an ideological framework, a condition by which Zionism is equated with all that is evil in our world, even you here today who support Israel, if I say to you the word Zionism, you immediately know to tell me what are the words that are today associated with it in our world. It would be apartheid, genocide, crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing. Now, we live in our world where we are always ready to believe the worst about everyone. You see it always on the news. The neighbor who's suddenly kind of charged with being a pedophile, and suddenly all the neighbors would say, yeah, there was something weird about him. And later when he's exonerated, that doesn't matter anymore. So we're ready to believe the worst. And people believe that there's no smoke without fire. So repeated enough time, show on enough placards, Zionism equals colonialism, Zionism equals apartheid, people will begin to believe it. And people will begin to think, if Zionism is so evil, so terrible, it almost becomes mandatory to get rid of its manifestation, the State of Israel. It no longer will be considered an atrocity. It will no longer be a tragedy if Israel doesn't exist, because it was so evil. It was all that is evil in our world. And notice how much time you spent here discussing the way that Israel is not apartheid. But just by making that discussion, we're losing. Because we are being forced to put the words Israel and apartheid in the same sentence. Even by denying it. Even by saying it's not true. This is part of how this war is being waged. Keep my distance. So the war is being waged with the idea that we will have to defend ourselves against the worst charges. And the sad thing is that there are still people who think that it is about facts, that it is about arguments, that it is about truth, right? We are here under an event of truth be told. The thinking perhaps is, say the truth has power. I wish we're so. Go even more back. Oh, facts are not enough. Truth is not enough. If that were the case, we would not be in the situation of where we are today. We need to understand that those on the other side, they don't care about truth. They don't care about facts. You talked about a debate. They don't care about debating as a form of finding the truth, of making a better argument. It's not about that. It is about war. And the ultimate goal of this war is victory. We need to define it as our goal, and I will explain. But on the other side, there is still this belief on behalf of some of our people that it is about what we argue, what we say, getting better facts, getting better arguments. All of these matter. But they're not going to be effective if we don't understand that the other side has no problems using weapons. And the weapons in this war are lies, and more lies, and more lies. And they're being repeated. And there's manipulation. And that is part of the tools of war. It's not about finding the truth. It's not about figuring out what are the facts. And what is the goal of this war? What is the end? What is the purpose? Quite simply, the end of Zionism, the end of the State of Israel. Because this war is merely the next phase in a variety of wars that have been waged against Israel by a variety of means. By invading armies, by terrorism, by economic strangulation of states. I'm not talking about BDS yet. Israel has had to face all of these challenges. And why? Because at the core, the Zionist idea, the simple, inspirational idea, that the Jewish people as a people, not as a religion, as a people, have the right to self-determination in the only land that they could ever call their own, that powerful idea is still denied. Certainly in this region and increasingly far beyond. It is denied in every aspect of it. That the Jewish people are not a people. That they have no real connection to the land. That they have taken a foreign land. That they are colonialists. You know, it is interesting. There is, many colonial movements that went about purchasing land, turning academics into farmers, and went about this and really went to a place that had no natural resources whatsoever. So going in this direction, this idea that the Jewish people are not a people, they have no connection to the land, and therefore they have no right to self-determination, and if they do, it's not here. This idea is being denied. And this is the idea that made the reality of Israel possible. Without it, there's no modern state of Israel. And this is the idea that's being attacked. And sadly, and we need to understand, certainly in this region, there's still no acceptance of the Jewish people as equals. There was an excellent piece in Haaretz, I think a couple of weeks ago, about a researcher who used to be very much on the radical left, and he's moved, and he talked about the story of the Jews in Arab countries. There's a tendency to describe it as a harmonious kind of living. It was harmonious in the sense that as long as the Jews in Arab countries knew their place, which was a subservient, protected people, it could be harmonious. But as soon as the Jews had the gall to be equal, to demand sovereignty, to be a powerful state right smack in the middle of the Middle East, well, that's not acceptable. And that is, we need in many ways to appreciate the perspective of the other side. It is a shock of historic proportions that you don't get over easily. To take a people who were second class, who were subservient, who knew their place for centuries, and within several decades, within the lifespan of one person, they are equal, they are powerful, and they're in your face. That's not something that you can expect people to get over quickly. So the idea is still not accepted. And when we hear today people saying violence against Israel has been renounced, well, we think that's a wonderful thing. And when we hear that the other side is using non-violent means against Israel. Now, when you tell people they are waging a non-violent struggle, battle against Israel, well, what do you think of? You think of Martin Luther King. You think of Gandhi. You think some elements of Mandela. But the idea is, if the battle is being waged by non-violent means, clearly the ends of this battle must be noble. But as Mandela himself even said, you can wage a violent battle for a noble goal, and you can wage a non-violent battle for a very sinister goal. And that's what we have here. Renouncing violence is not because the other side has found Gandhi, has decided to become a pacifist. It is because violence has failed them, quite simply. They have failed by violent means, but they have not given up on the goal. So they are using the means that they think right now might be most effective. Words, images, ideas. Turning the idea that makes Israel strong into something that no one will want to touch, so that one day the physical reality will follow. That is the basic end of this war, nothing less. It's not about freedom for the Palestinians. It's not about liberty for the Palestinians. It is not about having a Palestinian state. And I will say, all are goals that I support. But it's not about having what the United Nations envisioned, a Jewish state and an Arab state. It is still about not having the Jewish state. That is still the battle that is being waged, simply by different means. Now, I will say that one of the problems, still, but less than in the past, is that there is a defeatist attitude when it comes to this war. That this is a war that we cannot win. that at most we can hope to draw a tie, maybe score some points, but that we're too strong, we're too powerful, no one will ever believe us, if we're trying to show that we're under threat, so we can't win this war. But I would argue that we thought, certainly people thought about terrorism, about suicide bombing. Do you remember that time? There was a sense that there is no way we could deal with that. And we did. And I would argue that we will win this war as well. It will take us about as long that it took us to win all our other wars. A generation, 20 to 30 years. It took us about 20 to 30 years to get the Arab armies to decide that it's not worth it to try to invade Israel. It took us several decades to demonstrate that the Arab boycott is not going to stifle the Israeli economy and that we can basically behave as if we're an island. If we're forced to be an island, we'll just trade with everyone else in the world and to build a thriving export-based economy. And we've even been able to put terrorism at bay, to the point that I do think we can declare victory. Not that there are not efforts, but it has been won. And it will take us time to win this war. And we will make a lot of mistakes on the way, as we have in our past wars. But we will win. And how do I define victory? Because some people will say, it's one thing to win a war against an army, but how do you define victory in this war of images and ideas? And I say quite simply, the definition of victory is the day that those who hold these opinions, who voice these opinions that we've heard against Israel, against Zionism, will have the social acceptability of neo-Nazis. And that is my definition of victory. It's about the social acceptability of these ideas. Because right now, these ideas, it's exactly the opposite. The more you hold on to these ideas, the more you gain social acceptability. In some circles, liberal, left-wing, academic, this is the only way to move forward. As a student recently told me, as she was looking at her PhD options, she can either write an anti-Zionist PhD abroad or a post-Zionist PhD in Israel. And those are kind of the options that she was describing as looking at. So the idea is about social acceptability, about what gets you in, what gets you promoted. And right now, these are the ideas that get you in. These are the ideas of social acceptability. Traditional anti-Semitism has lost its social acceptability for obvious reasons. So, this is the new way to still have social acceptability by voicing very extremist views, but somehow not perceived as such, perceived as liberal, as progressive. So, I would say, first is to understand that this is war. Second is to understand that victory is the goal, nothing less. No defeatist attitude. And then we need to do what we did with all our other strategic challenges. Mobilize the people, the resources, the leadership. We are still not treating this challenge on par with physical challenges. I can tell you that as a member of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, I started to talk about this issue about, I would say by now 5 years ago. So we spoke about 4 or 5 years ago, and you can imagine what the Israeli Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee is. It's mostly the Defense Committee, high testosterone levels. And when I spoke of this war of images and words and ideas, I would get these like really cute pat on the head of the kind of, oh, that's so adorable. This idea of a war of words and images and ideas, it's so girly, truly sweet. And that was the sense in the beginning. Later we had the Marmara event. I'm on record about a month before, as the fleet was being prepared, to say that.
Just switch it off.
So I was on the record about a month before to say this is not about a military threat to Israel. Seriously, nobody thought that this ship was a military threat to Israel. It is about an image campaign. And the last thing we should be sending there are soldiers, because that's what the other side is expecting and wanting. But this is a thinking that was military threat, you send soldiers. You use the tools that we thought we needed to win, as we always say, the previous war. But this was a new kind of war, and I can say that following this event, there has been a far greater understanding that this is a strategic threat to Israel and Zionism. The Prime Minister, 2 months ago in his speech at AIPAC, used about a third of his speech to talk about this challenge. That sent a message. When the Prime Minister of Israel devotes a substantial share of his speech to talk about this issue, that's sending a message that that's where we expect mobilization. And what characterizes this war is that it's not defined by the borders of Israel. It's everywhere, in every arena, around the world. In many ways, Jews around the world felt it before Israelis, because they are and were on the front lines. In campuses and university, both the faculty and the students, in the United Nations, in the media, the new media and the old media, this is a multi-arena challenge. And as we mobilize, we need to understand several things. First, we cannot leave any arena unchallenged. You talked about the importance of being there. There is a tendency to say, what they're saying is so crazy, or this is so minor, or this is unimportant that we're not going there. But in this age, if people say that you're harvesting organs and you don't respond to that, then that just stays. And that's what comes up when people search. So we have to be in each and every arena. We have to respond, we have to initiate. It's exhausting. I find many people who have been at it by now for several years, they're exhausted. Answering the same crazy allegations again and again. But there is no other way to win this war by going again and again to the front and winning battle after battle after battle. And even though I said that this is not about facts and truth, these need to be our weapons. We cannot go to the front without mastering the facts, without knowing the truth. And I would say this is some of the greatest opportunities. I've seen some pretty amazing things emerge as a result of the threat. Think about it. Every time Israel faced a threat, it emerged better and stronger, with a superior military, with a thriving export economy, with a strong society. Already I'm seeing some pretty amazing things emerging from answering this threat. Israelis and Jews around the world working finally as equals. How long have we been talking about the need to have a different kind of relationship between Israel and Jewish people, one that is cooperative, equal? Well, in fighting this challenge, it is happening. There is an understanding on behalf of the Israeli government and Israelis that Jews around the world are the ones that understand their local arena best. They know the best solutions, and we need to work with them. It's not an up and down situation. It's not hierarchical. It's real cooperation. There is almost a renaissance of learning about Israel and Zionism, because as young people go to campus and realize that they don't know enough, they're trying to learn more, to know more, to arm themselves with history, with data, with facts. That in itself is a remarkable outcome of facing this challenge, a positive outcome. And that is what we need to be doing, and we need to understand that we are going to be doing it for at least the next 20 years. No easy, no simple victories, we somehow imagine that winning this war is about sending an articulate speaker to CNN to really stick it to the anti-Israeli speaker. And I wish it were so easy. It is about that, and making sure that one tweet over there is answered, and one post on Facebook, and something at the United Nations, and a campus. And we need to understand that South Africa is important. I wrote about that. Left-wing liberals see in South Africa a model. As a result, ideas that emanate from South Africa gain traction very quickly among the liberal left in Europe and later in the United States. So we either deal with it when it starts, or we have to mobilize in far greater efforts and numbers when it's already moved on. But South Africa is incredibly important as a source of ideas in this war of ideas. So I will end by saying that this is war. Our goal should be victory. It's not going to be short. We need mobilization of the kind that we had to face all our previous challenges, and that the goal of this war, even when it is waged by non-violent means, is as sinister as it ever has. And just a final word, I am in great belief, I hope and believe, that if there is any war that the Jewish people should truly be able to win, it is a war of ideas.